Challenges and Opportunities. This is part 2 in a 3-part webinar series, and this one we're going to be focusing on partnerships between water and energy utilities. I'm Joe Casola, the C2ES staff scientist and director for science and impact, and I'm joined here by Erica Brown from AMWA, and I'll let Erica take it away.
Hi, I'm Erica Brown, Director of Sustainability and Climate Programs for AMWA, and we're an organization of Metropolitan Water Systems. And another sponsor of this event is the Water ISAC, the Water Information Sharing and Analysis Center, whose mission is to keep drinking water and wastewater utility managers informed about potential risks and resilience, or risks to the resilience of our nation's water infrastructure. So this webinar is the second in a series. Our previous webinar examined water energy issues from a national perspective, and one of our speakers actually was Craig Zamuda from the Department of Energy, and he mentioned a report during his talk which came out yesterday, and there's a link on this slide to the report and also an infographic from the report. And these slides will be made available to attendees after the meeting, so if you're interested in checking that report out, you'll be able to do so. So this webinar today is going to focus more on what local utilities are doing and can do to partner with each other. And we're calling it effective stakeholder engagement and water and energy issues. And so just a little bit about logistics. So we're going to have 2 presentations, one from a water utility and one from an energy utility, about 15 minutes each, and then we are going to have a facilitated Q&A section. And those questions could be submitted by typing in the dialog box. If you look off to your right or in your dialog box, you can submit questions to us, and we'll be looking through those, and we'll pose them to the presenters during the Q&A time. There's getting up to close to 200 people on the line, so typing the questions in the box is going to be the most effective way for us to do that. And you don't have to wait until the end of a talk to put in your questions. You can do it any time during this broadcast. We're also going to do a few polling questions so we can get an idea of who's on the line, but also some feedback on our discussion today, which actually I'm going to have Joe start us off with our first question. So we'd just like to get a sense of who's on the line, and so you can take a minute and click the answer to this question, the phrase that best represents the organization that you represent, so we can get a sense of who's on the line. And we'll give it another few seconds. So thanks for clicking that. That's probably. So Joe's going to go ahead and show us the results so we can get a sense of who's on the line right now. It's coming.
There it is.
Okay, so we've got a good mix of folks on the phone right now, local, state, federal government, and which may include some utilities, water and wastewater utilities, and then some other folks as well as energy utilities. So thanks for participating in that. Well, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. Pat Davis is the Sustainability Manager for OWASA, the Orange Water and Sewer Authority in the Carrboro Chapel Hill community of North Carolina. Pat's worked for OWASA for more than 19 years. His work responsibilities include water conservation, water reuse planning, energy management, affordability outreach, and lots more fun activities. Pat did his undergraduate work in environmental science and his graduate studies at UNC Chapel Hill in city and regional planning with an emphasis in water resources. And in addition to working at OWASA, Pat was Water Resources Program Manager at the Triangle Council of Governments for 7 years. Pat, take it away.
Thank you, Erica. We really appreciate the opportunity to participate in the webinar today and to share our experience and to also learning from others who are on the webinar. I'm not sure that I'm going to have any new groundbreaking news or ideas or experiences to share. In fact, I expect some of the water and wastewater utilities represented on the webinar actually might be doing more with their electric utilities than we are. But we're glad to tell you about our relationship with Duke Energy, and Duke Energy meets about 90% of our facility energy requirements. And we believe the partnership that we have with Duke Energy is only going to grow in importance as energy costs continue to rise, and as we have increasing calls for substantial reductions in the use of fossil fuels and expansion in the use of renewable energy and other factors. So next slide. I'm just going to give you a quick introduction about Orange Water and Sewer Authority, and then review some key areas where we collaborate with Duke Energy. Then I'll also mention a couple areas where we haven't been quite as successful, in which we're certainly hoping to make more progress with Duke Energy in the future. So next slide. As Erica mentioned, we serve the Chapel at Carrboro community and surrounding areas in Piedmont, North Carolina. University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is our largest customer, and our service area is about 35 square miles. Local relief is about 240 to 700 feet mean sea level. We've got 82,000 residents and about 21,000 customer accounts. We're relatively small. We have a 20 million gallon per day water treatment plant, a 14.5 million gallon per day wastewater treatment plant, and 3 different surface water reservoirs, all of which are located in locally controlled upland water supply watersheds, and they're fairly close to our service area as well. Our westernmost reservoir, Cane Creek Reservoir, which is shown on the west side of this graphic, is about 12 or 13 miles from our water treatment plant. I'd like to add that we don't have any Duke Energy power generating facilities within our service area or within our upland water supply watersheds. So unlike a number of water utilities in other parts of the country, we don't deal as directly with some of the water supply management challenges and allocation issues that water utilities, wastewater utilities, and energy utilities directly deal with. Next slide, please. Hello? Next, is it not advancing? That's okay. Okay. All right. Our energy use, and I'm going to focus on electrical and natural gas energy use, is at about 40 or so different facilities throughout our operations. We've got about 40 electrical accounts, and in fiscal year 2013 used close to 22 million kilowatt hours of electricity at a cost of close to $1.4 million. The wastewater treatment plant operation accounted for about 2/3 of that energy use. We've also got 8 natural gas accounts, a relatively small amount of energy use at those locations where natural gas is used. Our use of natural gas is for things like building heating and also for providing supplemental fuel to the 2 boilers that provide heating for our Class A thermophilic anaerobic digestion process at our wastewater treatment plant. So next slide. So one of the things that we do, and that Duke Energy certainly helps us in terms of the data compilation and analysis, is we track and analyze energy use at all of our facilities and across different functional areas on at least a monthly basis. And this slide just shows a 7-year historical review of annual energy use by fiscal year across major functional areas. And I think the key point here is that wastewater treatment and disposal dominates our energy use. The other thing is that when we look at the total over the last 7 years, we're actually starting to see some progress in our energy efficiency, energy use reduction efforts. Next slide. Similar on the natural gas side, the energy equivalency of natural gas here is about 2.6 million kilowatt hours compared to electricity, which is close to 22 million kilowatt hours. Again, we're making progress on the reductions in use of natural gas within our facilities as well. Next slide. And one of the key things that we like to monitor is our energy use intensity. How much energy are we using to produce and provide 1,000 gallons of water, drinking water to our customers versus 1,000 gallons of wastewater collection, treatment, and disposal services. So this graph takes that prior information, applies the intensity of demands over that period, and shows what the energy use intensity is by water and wastewater treatment functions. What doesn't show up on here is that in the wastewater function, we now have a reclaimed water system that was put into effect in fiscal year 2009, and a portion of that green bar is actually increased energy use associated with reclaimed water on the wastewater side. But this shows that we're beginning to make some progress in reducing energy use intensity across our operations. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to quickly highlight some of the key things regarding our partnership with Duke Energy. And I'd like to begin by pointing out that Duke Energy has designated an account manager for us, and that account manager serves as our primary point of contact. And we think that's critical to the success of our relationship with Duke Energy. The account manager provides important technical support, and a couple examples are shown on this slide. First is that each year we get together and do a comprehensive facility-by-facility review of energy use, costs, and the rates and service contract arrangements associated with each of our 40 accounts with Duke Energy. We also look at the past use, and Duke Energy actually models our use against their different rate structures, and we collectively look and see whether there might be cost savings that we could achieve by changing the rate schedules under which our facilities apply. So that's really important, and we've achieved some cost savings over the years associated with that. Another example is our account representative just recently did an energy rates workshop for our staff, and that was like, we think our water sewer rate structures sometimes can be a bit complex. Well, energy rates of Duke Energy make our rates look pretty simple. And so the account manager has met with us and provided training to our staff, information about the interpretation of the rate schedules, and then specific examples of how increases and decreases in our energy use and our operations can ultimately affect our monthly and annual energy bills from Duke Energy. So those are two really important components of our partnership. Next slide, please. A couple other examples are that Duke Energy works closely with us on reviewing power feed arrangements to different facilities. And a really good recent example is that we did a pretty comprehensive review of our power feed arrangements to the wastewater treatment plant, and came up with several alternatives for how to modify those arrangements to help us reduce costs and avoid future cost increases and extra facility charges that Duke Energy was going to have to impose. And through that recent effort, we modified the power feed arrangements, and we've essentially avoided about $60,000 a year in increased fixed charges for the wastewater treatment plant electrical service. Another good example is our efforts to work with Duke on standby power generation facilities. And we've done a number of improvements in the arena of standby power in response to things like hurricanes and ice storms that essentially knock power out to our major facilities. And so we've made major investments in standby power generation. One of the good things is the way we've done that has enabled us to participate in Duke Energy standby power generation credits, and we receive more than $80,000 a year in credits for our standby power generators. Of course, Duke Energy, under that arrangement, can notify us in a relatively short amount of time that they need to automatically actuate our standby power generators so that they can shave peak demands associated with our facility, and then we go on standby power to help Duke out. So it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Okay, next slide. Another really good example, and this is a very recent one as well, is that we, in working with Duke Energy and talking about power feed arrangements and long-term energy costs and demands, we have started on a path to substantially increasing energy efficiency at our wastewater treatment plant. And we're currently we're nearing completion of installation of new high-efficiency blowers and mixers and a fine bubble diffuse aeration system at the wastewater treatment plant. And in response to our improvements, Duke Energy and the energy efficiency gains we're expecting from that, Duke Energy provided us a $168,000 custom incentive for that project. They've also given us some technical assistance in the past for audits of some of our major facilities, and we are working with them on pursuing rebate opportunities for other energy efficiency improvements, although I'm sure none will come close to the custom incentive that they approved for aeration system improvements at the wastewater plant. Next slide. So those past slides discuss some of the successes that we've had in our partnership, and those have been really important. We've been trying to push the envelope with Duke Energy, and a couple particular areas have to do with renewable energy. In response to their request for host sites to put forward potential sites for solar photovoltaic projects, we responded to that and offered to host some sites, but Duke Energy didn't select any of our facility sites for that. We hope to continue that discussion and to ultimately maybe be successful in that effort. We've also requested Duke Energy to consider providing financial support for a 300 to 350 kilowatt biogas to energy combined heat and power project at the wastewater treatment plant. And just we would expect that project to reduce our energy demands at the wastewater plant by more than 20%. Duke Energy has not been inclined to provide financial support for that project to date, and that's something that we're certainly continue to pursue with them and hope that we can perhaps get a different outcome and have Duke Energy support for that project at some point in the near future. And an emerging area that we're wanting to pursue with Duke Energy is in the arena of customer education and outreach. We certainly realize the increase in importance and challenges associated with the water energy nexus. And we also, in some of our service affordability efforts, have been emphasizing, hey, by reducing water use, our customers can save on their water and sewer bills. But by saving water and reducing hot water demands, they can also reduce their use of energy and their energy bills. And by saving water, that reduces the amount of energy and chemicals that we need to use in order to meet their demands. We want to be much more effective in informing and engaging our customers in the water energy nexus issues. And we want Duke to be an active partner in our efforts to do that with our customer base. We've made the request to management at Duke Energy, and we're still awaiting a response. Of course, they've had some other pressing issues that they're dealing with, and I'm sure we're a bit down the priority list at the current time. But we're certainly going to continue to pursue that and hope that we're successful and perhaps can come up with a really great strategy in partnership with Duke Energy on the customer education outreach effort. Okay, next slide, please. So just a couple quick closing thoughts. We think it's very important that our utility has a designated account manager and a point person at Duke Energy that we can communicate with and we can go directly to under all kinds of situations, and that's been very important for us and very successful. As a water utility, we think it's extremely important that we stay informed and involved in water and energy nexus issues, and that we be proactively thinking about the implications and challenges associated with those issues. And with respect to our relationship with Duke Energy, the fact that we haven't been successful in certain areas doesn't mean we're not going to continue to pursue those opportunities. And I highlight the fact that we got the custom incentive from Duke for the energy efficiency improvements at the wastewater plant. And we got that despite the fact that some Duke Energy staff told us that we likely weren't going to be able to get a dime of incentive money because we had already made the decision to do that project and had already made plans to finance that on our own, and they felt that Duke, in hindsight, wouldn't provide support. Well, Duke Energy did. We kept pursuing it, and they wanted to be seen as a party supporting that project, and so we were fortunate there, but we were persistent in doing that. And again, as I said at the beginning, we certainly think that our relationship with Duke Energy is going to grow in importance for a number of reasons, and so we need to continue to strengthen and build on that partnership. And so as we try and do that, we certainly look forward to learning from AMWA, the partner agencies on the webinar, and also those of you who are in attendance on the webinar, and giving us some great ideas and examples, best practices as to how you can help us build and strengthen our partnership with Duke Energy. Okay, next slide. And so with that, I'd just say thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion and the questions.
Pat, thanks so much, and I can say that we have gotten several questions already that are specific to some of the things that you mentioned, and after Doris speaks, we'll be sending those your way or telling you those. I want to go to, we have another polling question now, so those of you on the line, if you could take a look at this question, particularly if you're a utility. So we want to know, if you could have your partner utility do one thing, what would it be? So take a moment now to sort of click on your answer. If you look in front of you, there's a little bubble screen, and you can just use your mouse and click on your answer. And we'll give that a minute or so, and then we'll show everybody the answers in about 10 more seconds or so. Great, just another second because people are still entering info. Okay, so the responses should pop up in a second. Oh, there they are. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen. So yeah, it looks like providing financial incentives is a big one, and then the improving outreach and increasing efficiency are tied for second. So thanks for your participation there, and I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
Great. Thanks, Erica. It's my pleasure to introduce Doris Cooksey from CPS Energy. Doris is a manager in the Environmental and Sustainability Division of CPS Energy, overseeing the Water Quality and Planning section. She's been with CPS since 1991. She is responsible for regulatory compliance, water permitting, and long-term water resource planning. She participates in regional water planning and on stakeholder panels working to solve long-term water supply challenges and drought issues. And we're really happy to have her with us. And Doris, I'll be moving the slides, and I apologize that we've noticed we've got a little delay going, but please feel free to just tell me next slide, and I'll try to keep up with you. Doris, you might be on mute there. Doris, we're still not getting any audio from you.
Well, why don't we take some questions for Pat, and now, oh, sorry. Is that her? Doris?
Doris, is that you?
Do you hear me?
Yes. Great.
Oh, that is really weird. I didn't do anything different. It's a phone, I guess, a phone issue. Anyway, I'm very sorry about that. Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon or morning, I guess, depending on your location. I'm very happy to be asked to present today because I think we have an exciting story to tell. Next. I guess I'll just say I represent CPS Energy, which is an electric company, but I'm also going to try to cover some of the water utility projects Are the slides moving? Are y'all having a problem with the?
We're having a problem with the phone, Doris.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay. Are the slides moving on my end? I don't see the slides up.
Sure. Which slide should we be on? The background slide?
Okay, that's fine. I'll just say that we're located in San Antonio, where it's hot and humid, and CPS Energy is the largest municipally owned electric and gas utility in the United States. We have about 720,000 electric customers and about 320,000 gas customers, and we're both a transmission and distribution company and operate power plants with about 7,700 megawatts of generation capacity. The local water company is the San Antonio Water System, or SAWS, and they serve 1.6 million people. They're both a water supply utility and a wastewater provider with about 460,000 water customers and 400,000 wastewater customers. Some of the things we have in common are that we're both city-owned, but we're managed independently. We're both recognized as innovative industry leaders, and we have strong conservation programs with sizable customer rebate programs. Also, each utility is the largest customer of the other. Next. Both utilities have diversified our resources over time and are moving to more sustainable resources. Both understand the concept of save water, save energy, and vice versa. Next. Some of the things we currently partner on began long ago. After the drought of record in the 1950s, wastewater effluent was used to cool our power plants instead of using drinking water. And that's a 50,000 acre-feet contract per year. And the income for that was used to fund the startup of SAWS's recycled water system. CPS Energy needed a location at one point with a lot of land, and so a solar farm was installed on a wastewater treatment plant property, which generated income from the lease of that for the wastewater company. We're currently studying a co-location of a power plant at a SAWS desalination plant that's under construction, and we may also share smart meter infrastructure, which would allow customers to control their energy use and conserve, and for water leaks to be detected sooner. We also take advantage of each other's rebate programs, and finally our collaboration boosts each other's understanding of the energy-water nexus. Next. As mentioned earlier, one of the first partnerships was an effluent reuse project. Together, we pioneered the use of sewage effluent for power plant cooling in the 1960s. 2 cooling lakes were built for power plants, and treated effluent is transported via the San Antonio River from the treatment plant to the lakes. The chart here shows drinking water use in green at the bottom, and a steady climb in generation as the city grew over the last 50 years, which is the red line. And as growth in reuse water in blue, you can kind of see that it continues to grow, the amount of reuse water that we've used over the years. And the other thing about that is the reuse water has been a reliable source of water even in drought, and so we haven't had any issues with having enough water for power generation during the drought. Next. We're shifting to less water-intensive technologies as CPS Energy. We're beginning to use more gas combustion turbines, and we're retiring 2 coal units early in 2018, which is also a carbon reduction strategy. We're on an aggressive path to diversify and reduce the carbon intensity of our generation fleet, and we have a strong demand reduction and energy conservation program. It's our Save for Tomorrow, I have a typo there, Save for Tomorrow energy plan, which will grow to 770 megawatts by 2020, and the intent was to offset the need to build another power plant. Next. The largest impact to water savings is from our renewable energy program. which uses renewables use zero water, and they have zero carbon emissions. And our goal is to have, I guess, get up to about 1,500 megawatts of renewable energy by 2020, or that's about 20% of our generation from renewables. And we currently have approximately 1,200 megawatts in operation. We have a mix of wind, solar, and landfill gas, but are shifting focus from wind to solar now that solar prices are less, have come down or are less expensive. Next. And this slide is just quickly to show savings from renewables in blue to those from our conservation program, which are in red at the top there. And our largest water savings obviously come from our renewable generation. Next. To conserve water at our facilities, CPS recycles cooling water in the reservoir for reuse. We recycle wastewater streams at about 99%. We repair and maintain equipment to minimize water loss. We did a pilot study utilizing coal pile dust suppression chemistry to minimize water usage. And we use new water treatment technologies when possible. We've increased power plant efficiency projects, and we use native landscaping, which uses minimal irrigation. Next. Now I'll switch and cover a few things the water utility is doing. San Antonio Water System has one of the country's leading water conservation programs and has received national recognition for a decrease in per capita consumption. They have the nation's largest direct recycling water system and have diversified their supply. Two of their most recent projects that are of interest is they have a aquifer storage recovery system that's in production and a desalination plant which has begun construction or just begun construction. The ASR is the third largest underground storage facility in the country. It has 74,000 acre-feet currently in storage. And something of interest for the ASR is that it's an integral part of an endangered species habitat conservation plan. Next. SAWS has done several energy projects, energy efficiency projects. They've done a large LED lighting upgrade project. They've done a chiller upgrade. We're using CPS Energy rebates. They work to increase building efficiency with things like sleep mode and computers and that sort of thing. And they have a much more comprehensive energy audit planned with CPS Energy assisting. And they participate in the CPS Energy Demand Reduction Program, which is a peak shaving program, and have saved about $270,000 a year to reduce their electricity use during peak. They're also evaluating inline generators. Some of the suggestions and takeaways that I would say is each water utility should probably develop a relationship with your electric utility counterpart. There may be additional services that they offer you as a large customer, and we do a number of the things like Joe was mentioning for our local water utility. And I would definitely evaluate the time of use for significant cost savings. Next. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we get involved in shaping policy where we can. CPS Energy has testified at state and national levels on sustainability and renewable energy. And both utilities are involved in regional water planning and state stakeholder planning groups. Some of the current ones we're involved with are drought planning and management stakeholder groups, endangered species, environmental flows, and watershed protection. Next. And that ends my presentation, and I thank you very much, and I apologize for the technical problems.
Thank you, Doris. That was great, and yeah, the apologies really are from our side as the kind of running the show here or failing to do so. But thank you so much for persevering and sharing some of the great work that you're doing in San Antonio. Before we move to Q&A, we're going to do one more polling question. And this is really similar to the second polling question, but rather than talking about your kind of sister utility, what just would be the best next step for your utility or for you and your sister utility to engage in? And we've got a few different options of improving the relationship between the two entities, upgrading equipment and operations, internal training, or doing something external to customers. So I'm going to launch that poll right now, and if you could click away. Just a couple more seconds. Great, and I'll share the results. And it looks as though the relationship issue was kind of the winner of this poll, which seems to resonate with our two speakers. It seems that that's an important component in a lot of their success as well. And then a note on equipment and reaching out to customers were also kind of high scoring. So thanks a lot for taking some time to fill that out. Okay, now we'd like to move on to the questions. And Erica, I think you have a few teed up from some of our listeners.
Yeah, there's a lot of great questions here for both Pat and Doris. And so, Pat, I'm going to start by hitting you with two questions, actually, because it's sort of about some of the terms I think that you used in your talk. The first is, can you explain what a power feed arrangement is? And the second is your standby power system diesel engine generators, and does that standby power meet 100% of the load?
So by power feed arrangements, what I'm referring to is the electrical services that come to our specific facilities. And for example, at the wastewater treatment plant, we had, when the facility was expanded back in the 1980s, EPA funded the installation of and service for a second electrical distribution feed from a different substation. And when Hurricane Fran hit here, both of those feeds went down. So we lost power to the wastewater treatment plant, and we didn't have standby power generators. So we subsequently put in 2 standby power generators. And in response to the second question, the standby power generators at the wastewater plant are both above, well, one's 2,000 kW, the other is 2,700 kW, and either one of those generators alone can power the entire wastewater plant. So, by reviewing the power feed arrangements, we're able to look and say, well, with standby power generators now, are we able to have the additional reliability and redundancy we want? And does that enable us then to reduce the extra facilities charges associated with dual feeds coming from different directions and things like that? So, and with standby power, I mentioned the wastewater plant, but we also have standby power facilities, generators at our central office and water treatment plant, at our drinking water supply sources, and our largest wastewater pumping stations. And all of those standby power generators are diesel powered, and they all have the ability to power full operation of those different facilities under emergency conditions.
Great. Thanks, Pat. Okay, Doris, I'm going to hit you up with sort of 2 questions also. The first one is, do you have any other water customers, and what is their partnership role? Well, that's the first one. And then the second one is, could you speak more on your shared rebate programs and also your planned smart meter installations? So they're not exactly related, but I thought they were both good.
Well, I'm with the CPS Energy, so the first question about other water customers of ours, we don't have any water customers directly. And then on the smart meter project, I'll jump to it. Basically, we're getting ready to install smart meters, you know, across our service territory. It'll be a slower process, and eventually homeowners will be able to use something called Home Manager, where they can, by phone or computer, remotely check how much electricity they're using, and you know, turn appliances on and off even. And with San Antonio Water System, we're already going to have to build the infrastructure for those smart meters to send signals back and forth. And the water SAWS is interested in looking at putting smart water meters in so that they can, one, save on meter reads. You know, that can save a significant amount of money in labor and fuel cost as well. And the other thing is customers would be maybe better able to tell if they have a water leak, because you could all of a sudden see that their water usage went up significantly in a month.
Thanks, Doris. Okay, the next question is for Pat. So has Duke Energy provided a reason as to why they're not willing to financially participate in your CHP project? And then also another one about Duke. And does Duke Energy provide you with increased incentives associated with your partnership? Or maybe as a result of your partnership?
So regarding our biogas energy combined heat and power project proposal and request to Duke, one response that we received was that they had some legal constraints with respect to their energy efficiency incentives program and what types of projects they had state approval to provide incentives for, and that one apparently fell outside the range of those types of projects. We also did look at a potential renewable power sale agreement with Duke Energy, and that could have been allowed. The problem was the economic feasibility of that. You know, it was not practical for us given our competing capital improvements needs. It would have had a payback of around 30 years, and there's certainly some questions regarding the useful life of the primary mover in that, the engine. So there are a couple reasons regarding, you know, that particular project not moving forward at this time. But again, we're optimistic we may be able to work something out in the future. And the second question, I mean, Duke, you know, their incentives programs fall under the regulatory authority of the North Carolina Public Utilities Commission. And so my understanding is that, you know, they have certain procedures and analyses that they use to determine what the incentives are, and that they don't have a whole lot of flexibility in that. And so I don't think we've gotten any special privileges, or that by collaborating with them on things has given us a greater ability to get incentives than otherwise might have been the case, other than our communications just back and forth. They just continue to remind us, hey, these are types of projects that you're eligible to get incentives under the Utilities Commission approved incentives program of Duke Energy.
Thanks, Pat. In both your talks, and this question is for both Pat and Doris, you really, I think, shared a lot about things that you're trying to do going forward. And I'm curious if there's a particular time frame that you're planning around when you're thinking about the future. Is it 5 years or 10 years or maybe even something longer, you know, with respect to environmental performance or payback periods or things like that? Is there a particular time frame that's particularly compelling for you and or your utility partner? And maybe yeah, Doris, if you want to go first. I left that one banking.
We used to plan out about 20 years for which power plants and what type of power plants you know, we would build, you know, using population growth, projected fuel costs, evaluating new impacts from new technologies. But now it's much more dynamic, and the planning changes very quickly. There's a lot of impacts from climate change rules, other environmental regulations, the cost of fuels. You know, the price of natural gas has gone down significantly, and that kind of came out of the blue. And then there's a lot of new devices that both use the electricity and conserve it. So, you know, it's a very dynamic kind of situation now as opposed to in the past. And so we have, on occasion, decided to build a power plant very, very quickly. We changed strategy to build a power plant. So we're planning, you know, short term and long term, both.
That's really interesting. Pat, I don't know if you have any thoughts to share on the time frame issue.
Sure. Our one of our key planning challenges is ensuring an adequate, reliable, and quality water supply to meet the community's needs for the long term. And because of the lead time associated with planning, design, construction, financing of those projects, and the importance of the environmental and social impacts of those types of projects, we have a 50-year planning horizon for our long-range water supply planning. As a result, and certainly there's a lot of error and uncertainty associated with our demand projections and other assumptions in that, and there's the implications of increasing climate variability, increasing temperature, changing precipitation, evaporation levels, all those things. We recognize that, but we also understand that we can't just ignore, or we can't say, well, there's too much error and uncertainty, so we can't plan that far. We think, you know, for those types of major decisions, we've got to be looking out. We've got to be doing what-ifs and testing assumptions and looking, you know, does this set of solutions that we're headed towards hold up? Are they robust under a wide range of scenarios and assumptions? And is the plan dynamic enough, as Doris mentioned, that it doesn't preclude us from future strategies? So in response to the 01-02 drought, you know, as part of our long-range water supply planning strategies, we actually entered into a multi-party agreement to acquire a stone quarry. We would get royalties from a quarry, and as part of that contractual agreement in 2030, that quarry operation will turn over all that property, and we'll be able to use it as an additional 3 billion gallon or so drinking water supply source for the community, and it's in one of our upland watersheds, so it's going to be locally controlled. I mean, so we're looking out and trying to identify and secure or not preclude strategic opportunities. And another example is our Reclaimed Water System partnership with the university that now meets their cooling tower makeup requirements for their chiller plants on campus. And that project, not only has it reduced water demands by 10%, but it also reduces the energy use and demands associated with meeting the university's water needs. So it provides positive energy savings and carbon footprint benefits, as well as providing us a more resilient water supply. So we're looking out long term, trying to identify strategic opportunities, facility sites, and other things, and make sure that we, you know, have the ability to respond in the future to a range of conditions. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
Thanks, Doris, and thanks, Pat. Those are great answers. I mean, I think to emphasize the, you know, you have all these things that are happening quickly and being nimble, and at the same time coordinating that with a longer-term vision, or not ignoring what may happen in the farther future. Erica, I think there's a couple more questions that were one or two in our last few minutes.
Yeah, thanks. I had a clarifying question for Doris, and then a final question for both of you. So Doris, the clarifying question, and then if you could also take the following question is, does your utility have any other electric customers or energy customers that are water utilities, or is SAW your only customer that is a water utility? And then the question for both of you is, have you thought about potential impacts of the proposed 111D EPA rule, the power plant rule that just came out recently, proposed recently, and how that might affect the energy-water nexus?
We do have some smaller water utilities, some suburban cities that I guess have some, some of their own water wells and supply. So there are some other water utilities, but SAWS is by far the biggest because they're so large. They serve the metropolitan area of San Antonio, and both their service territory and ours is roughly the major county that we're located in. So they by far are our largest customer. And then on the new regulation that came out, we've been anticipating that it's coming, and we've been looking at our, really leveraging renewables and that sort of thing. There's concern about carbon sequestration and how, you're going to meet that. There is a lot of water demand with it, but we really haven't. We're following the technologies, but we haven't chosen anything yet. But I think we're still in the process of evaluating. We think we're situated pretty good. The main limitation, I guess, is that renewables. We feel like renewables solves a lot of answers for both climate as well as water, but we feel like you can only get in about 20% reliably, so that you don't have reliability problems on the grid. However, if we can develop some of the technologies for energy storage, that's, I think, where the solution lies. Partly. That's a big part of the solution.
Pat, you have any thoughts on that, or you guys looked at it much?
Yeah, just a couple general comments. One, I just think that's another indication that our energy costs are going to continue to increase, and perhaps at a faster rate than Energy Information Administration, predicts. And I also think there'll be, as part of all of that, there'll be increasing requirements for renewable energy, and that that again will provide upward pressure on rates, energy rates. But I think that also provides some opportunities for us to build on and strengthen that partnership with Duke Energy. In terms of the regs, in terms of those direct impacts on us, I'm not really sure what those are going to be other than cost implications and some strategic opportunities. But at the same time that all these challenges for reduction in carbon footprint and all these other things are having, we're dealing with increasingly stringent water and wastewater treatment requirements and regulations, and a lot of the advancements in treatment requirements, are certainly going to involve the use of more energy-intensive technologies, and so it's a real challenge in reducing our carbon footprint, and that's one that certainly there'll be improvements in technology and solutions, but there'll be upward pressure on water and sewer rates and fees and the affordability challenges that we all face. And there are a lot of smart people out there. Hopefully, a lot of them on the webinar are going to follow up with emails to me and tell me what the answers are, and it'll be really simple, and I'll look really stupid. But maybe that's naively optimistic. But I do think all these things just point to the strategic importance of having strong partnerships with our respective utility service providers, and that can only be beneficial. It doesn't mean it's all the time going to be a happy marriage, but at least it's going to be something that together we're going to have some synergistic benefits that by just continuing to act on our own we wouldn't be able to achieve. So I look forward to follow-up conversations and hearing more about folks' ideas about how we can improve what we're doing and be better positioned for the long term.
Well, Pat, I don't think there's a better way to really end the webinar. I think that's a really excellent parting thought. Now, I just want to thank you and Doris for putting together great presentations and for really adding some great answers to the questions. We apologize to those that we couldn't get to all the questions, but we invite you to follow up with us or with the speakers to continue this conversation after the webinar. All of these slides, including a recording of this webinar, is available on the C2ES website, and I believe there'll be links on the AMWA website as well. You can also look at the previous webinar in this series, and you can get information about our upcoming webinar, which will be July 24th. We're going to talk about stakeholder engagement, and we're also going to talk, I think, add a little twist about innovation. And I think that's a theme that we definitely heard emerging today about trying to keep pace with the technologies that are available and how important it is to try to take advantage of them. Otherwise, if you have any comments or suggestions about this webinar series, please feel free to reach out to Erica or myself. And with that, I just want to say thanks to everybody for their participation, and we hope to see you again next month.
For everybody.